They call it many names. The dead zone, the pit, the glow. Every scaver in the wastes has heard of it, whispered around campfires and tavern tables, spoken with the same mix of fear and temptation you hear in a gambler's voice before they roll the dice. It is not a ruin like any other. It is not some forgotten gas station, not a rusted vault, not the bones of a city. It is a scar, a wound on the earth itself, carved by fire so bright it lit up the world before it burned it away. That wound never healed. Even now, 2 centuries after the bombs, it still glows at night. Not from fire, not from lanterns, from something deeper. Something no man can truly see or touch, but which eats at you all the same. The Geiger counters scream at its edge, a choir of static that sets your teeth on edge. Men say, even without a counter, you can feel it, a pressure on your skin, a heaviness in your chest, as though the air itself knows you don't belong there. The glow. My name is Rick Morton. I had heard the stories all my life. Scavengers who went in, looking for riches. Scientists driven by curiosity. Raiders thinking they could loot and run. Almost none returned. And those who did, they came back changed. Not ghouls, not quite. Just sick. Their skin burned, their eyes sunken, their coughs wet and rattling. Some died days later. Some lasted longer. But they carried the sickness with them, wasting away no matter what medicines they found. So why would anyone go in? Because the glow is not just death. It is treasure. The West Tek facility lies at its heart, the birthplace of weapons, armor, technology beyond the reach of most wastelanders. It was here the scientists played with the atom, caged it, bent it to their will. Power armor, energy weapons, secrets of the old world. All of it was born here, or so the legends say. And when the bombs fell, the fire didn't just kill. It sealed those treasures inside, locking them in a vault of radiation that no ordinary man could breach. For scavengers like me, the glow is both curse and calling. You can spend a lifetime pulling scrap from the skeletons of cars, rusting radios, half-broken terminals, and never touch anything more valuable than a handful of caps. But if you dare the glow, if you strip even a piece of tech from its ruins, that could feed you for life. That could buy you a settlement, a fortune, a name remembered long after the radstorms have swept your bones away. That is what they tell you. The truth is simpler, uglier. The glow gives, but it always takes more than it gives back. I knew this. We all knew this. And still, I went. Not because I thought myself braver or stronger, not because I hungered for glory. No, I went because hunger of another kind drove me there. Hunger of the belly, of the empty pockets, of the gnawing fear that if I didn't do something soon, I'd rot in some alley forgotten, with nothing to show for a lifetime of scavenging but scars and regrets. The wastes do not forgive weakness. They don't care for honesty or decency or whether you've tried your best. The wastes care only for what you can take and what you can hold. I had nothing. So when the chance came, a crew forming to head south, to brave the dead zone, to strip the bones of West Tek itself, I said yes. Was it greed, desperation, madness? Perhaps all three. But when you live in the shadow of the atom, madness becomes survival. I remember the night we set our plan. A fire burned low in the barrel, shadows dancing on the cracked walls of an abandoned diner. There were 5 of us, men and women I barely knew, bound not by trust, but by need. Each spoke of what they'd heard, what they'd dreamed of finding. Energy cells, circuit boards, schematics worth more than a city's ransom. They spoke of fortune. I spoke little. In truth, I thought only of survival. A pack of rad meds, a few stim packs, some scraps of tech to sell before the sickness took me. That would have been enough. But the glow is not a place where you decide what is enough. The glow decides for you. And so, as I sit here now, writing these words with trembling hands and a body that aches with every breath, I remember that night. The fire, the faces, the hope, the greed, the fear, all mingled together in our voices. I remember the sound of my own voice, quieter than theirs, but steady. Yes, I'll go. That was the moment my fate was sealed. The glow was waiting for us. It had been waiting for 200 years, and once you step into its shadow, you never truly leave it behind. This is my story. The story of a scavenger who dared to strip the dead zone. The story of the glow and the price it demands. If you listen, if you take anything from these words, let it be this. The glow is not a place. The glow is a hunger. It will offer you wonders. It will tempt you with fortune, but it does not forgive. It does not forget. And it always collects its debt. The wastes are cruel everywhere, but the road south carried a cruelty all its own. We set out before dawn, 5 of us moving light, each step heavy with the weight of what we carried. Rad meds, filtered water, rations dry as dust, and weapons meant less for glory and more for survival. No wagons, no Brahmin. Too slow, too tempting a target for raiders, or worse. Only what our backs could bear and our hands could wield. The crew was a strange mix, as all scav crews are. There was Marin, lean and sharp-eyed, who'd lived most of her life stripping ruins along the coast. She claimed she could smell copper wiring under 10 feet of concrete. Then there was Jed, a brute of a man, scarred from chin to chest, who said little but carried the heaviest load, without complaint. He had the look of someone who'd already buried too many friends to waste words. The other 2 were brothers, Caleb and Jonas, quick with their knives and quicker with their tongues. They joked often, too often, the kind of talk that tried to push fear away by smothering it with laughter. But in their eyes, I saw the truth. They were as afraid as the rest of us. And then there was me, a scaver too long in the trade to have illusions left, too poor to walk away, too desperate to say no. We followed the cracked highways south, through fields of rusting cars whose bones had long since been picked clean. The sun baked the asphalt, and each step kicked up dust that clung to our tongues. We walked past skeletons melted into the road, their bones fused with steel, reminders of the fire that had birthed the glow. None of us spoke as we passed them. Some things you don't need to name. The closer we drew, the heavier the air seemed to grow, not just heat, though the desert sun bore down mercilessly. Something else, a weight, as though the world itself knew what lay ahead and sought to warn us away. On the 3rd day, we passed a caravan going the other way. Merchants with Brahmin, loaded with scrap, their guards worn and hollow-eyed. They eyed us in silence until one, an older man with a scar splitting his lip, spoke. "You're headed south." It wasn't a question. Marin nodded. "The glow." The man spat, shook his head. "Don't. No tech's worth the price." Jonas grinned, too bold for his own good. "You sound like you've been there." The merchant's eyes darkened. "I have. That's why I'm still alive." He tugged his Brahmin forward and said no more. We watched them vanish into the dust, their silence louder than any scream. For a time after, none of us spoke. The Wasteland tested us, as it always does. A radstorm on the fourth day, its green haze sweeping across the horizon like a curtain of death. We huddled beneath a collapsed overpass, wrapping cloth around our faces, praying the storm passed quick. The wind howled, dust stinging our eyes, the static crackle of radiation prickling against our skin. For hours, we sat in that half-light, coughing, waiting, listening to the Geiger counters hiss faintly, even through the concrete. When the storm passed, the sky was clear, the air sharp and cold. But we left weaker than before. Coughs rattled in our chests, our water tasted of dust. Caleb muttered that it was an omen. Marin snapped at him to shut up, but the unease lingered. On the fifth day, we crossed into lands where the ground itself bore scars. Great gouges of glass and twisted metal, black craters that stretched for miles. The ruins of West Tek's fall. The brothers stopped joking then. Even Jed's silence felt heavier. At night, the glow showed itself on the horizon. Not a fire, not a city. A faint, unnatural shimmer. A light that bent wrong, like heat rising from the desert floor. My stomach churned at the sight, and my skin prickled though the air was cool. We camped that night on a ridge, the glow visible in the distance. Jonas stared at it too long, his face pale. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "No," Jed said, his first word in days. His voice was low, rough, like stone grinding on stone. "It's not." The rest of us said nothing. He was right. As we drew closer, the wildlife grew strange. Brahmin with twisted horns, mole rats with tumors hanging like sacks from their bellies. Even the air carried a stink. Acrid, metallic, the smell of rust and rot. Our counters hissed more often, and we rationed rad meds carefully, knowing we'd need them more once we stepped into the crater itself. It was on the seventh day we found them, a group that had not been as lucky. The bodies lay sprawled along the road, their packs scattered, weapons rusted. Their counters were shattered, their suits torn, their skin blistered and blackened. Marin crouched to search one, but even before she touched it, the air shimmered with heat, and our own counters screamed. We backed away fast, leaving the corpses to the flies. None of us spoke for hours after. That night, as the glow shimmered closer than ever, I lay awake staring at the stars. My mind drifted to the stories I'd heard, scavengers who went in and came out mad, or glowing, or not at all. And I wondered, would we be any different? Would our bones join the countless others, scattered in the dust, melted into glass? I almost turned back that night. Almost. But hunger is stronger than fear. Hunger for caps, hunger for survival, hunger to prove that you're more than another nameless body rotting in the wastes. That hunger carried me forward, as it carried us all. At dawn, we rose and walked on. The glow loomed before us now, vast and silent. A wound in the earth that still bled light. The Geiger counters screamed. My skin itched. My breath felt thick, heavy. We had reached the edge, and from that moment, I knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The wasteland is full of ruins. Towers of concrete split open like rotten teeth, vault doors twisted off their hinges, factories slumped in rust. I've seen them all, and most of the time they blur together. Another pile of old-world bones, another corpse of the past left for scavengers like me to pick clean. But the glow was different. We stood on the ridge at dawn, the desert stretching silent and still behind us. Before us yawned the crater, a wound in the earth so vast it seemed to swallow the horizon. The first light of morning spilled across it, painting the twisted ground in hues of ash and sickly green. It was not just emptiness. It pulsed. The air shimmered, rippling like heat waves, though the wind was cold enough to sting my cheeks. The Geiger counters wailed in unison, their static so loud it was almost a voice, as if the earth itself was screaming for us to turn back. My skin prickled, a crawling itch that no scratching eased. For a long while, none of us spoke. Maren broke the silence first. Her voice was thin, almost reverent. West Tek. The ruins lay at the crater's heart, a shattered husk of steel and concrete, half buried in glassy slag. The facility's walls slumped inward, bent by heat beyond imagining. Towers that once clawed at the sky now jutted at broken angles, their shadows stretching across the wound like black fingers. It glowed faintly, not like flame, but like embers smoldering deep underground. At night, I would later see it more clearly, veins of green light running through the rubble, as though the earth itself bled radiance. But even by daylight, it hummed. Not a sound you heard with your ears, but one that pressed against your chest, sank into your bones. Jed spat into the dust. His jaw was set tight, but his eyes betrayed something else. Awe. The brothers, Caleb and Jonas, laughed nervously. Worth it already, Jonas muttered, though his hands shook as he adjusted his pack straps. Caps enough to buy a city down there. No caps if we die first, Caleb shot back, his voice hard. Maren ignored them both. She knelt near the ridge, eyes locked on the wreckage below, as if she were already there. Her lips moved in a whisper I couldn't catch. I stayed standing, though my knees begged to buckle. The glow was beautiful, in the way a fire is beautiful as it eats through wood, in the way a storm is beautiful when it tears roofs from homes. It was beauty laced with terror, the kind that makes you want to look away, but cannot. I remembered stories told by older scavengers, men with missing teeth and hollow eyes who warned never to go south. The glow's alive, one had told me once. It breathes, it waits. And when you step inside, it eats you piece by piece. Looking down into that crater, I believed him. The air grew heavier the longer we stood there. My chest tightened, my throat grew raw, my skin burned with invisible fingers. I tugged the cloth higher over my face, but it did little. Already, the glow was seeping in. We pulled back from the ridge, retreating into the shadow of a half-collapsed overpass where the counters hissed instead of screamed. There, we made camp, though none of us felt like eating. Even the brothers were quiet, their laughter gone. Maren pored over her notes, scraps of maps and rumors, scribbled in shaky handwriting. She spoke of entrances, of side tunnels collapsed by the blast, of shafts that might still connect to the deeper levels of West Tek. Her voice grew faster, more excited, the words spilling like a gambler, listing every way the dice might fall in his favor. Jed cut her off with a grunt. It's a grave. She glared at him, but said nothing. Later, when the sun dipped low, we returned to the ridge. The crater had changed. In the dark, the glow revealed its true face. The ruins pulsed with light, faint but steady, a green shimmer that ran through cracks and fissures like veins beneath skin. The ground itself seemed to hum, the counters shrieking even louder than before. I swore I saw shadows move in the depths, though whether they were real or tricks of the light, I cannot say. Jonas whispered, "It's alive." No one laughed at him. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay on my back staring at the stars, listening to the counters hiss and the wind carry faint echoes from the crater. Sometimes I thought I heard voices. Not words, not really, just murmurs, like the sound of people talking in another room, too muffled to understand. I told myself it was the wind. But when I glanced at the others, I saw them stiff, eyes wide, listening too. We were already inside the glow, though we hadn't yet stepped into the crater. Its reach was longer than we'd thought, longer than any medicine could cover. It had us before we even began. By morning, our eyes were bloodshot, our movements sluggish. The rations tasted of metal. The water left our tongues dry. But we rose anyway, packs on our backs, weapons at hand. No one spoke of turning back, not because we were brave, because it was too late. Once you've seen the glow, once you've stood on that ridge and watched its light pulse through the earth, you cannot walk away. It whispers to you, tempts you, promises fortune beyond measure. And more than that, it dares you. It dares you to prove you can take what so many before you could not. That was the moment I understood the truth. The glow is not just a place. It is a trap set by the past, baited with the promise of tomorrow. And like fools, we had stepped willingly into its jaws. At dawn, we began our descent. The first step down was the hardest. Standing on the rim, the crater looked less like Earth and more like a scar carved into the skin of the world. Its edges were jagged, glassy in places, melted stone that glittered faintly in the dawn light. The slope fell steep and uneven, scattered with boulders twisted by heat, their shapes warped into grotesque statues. We tightened our masks, checked our counters, swallowed another round of Radax. The medicine left a bitter taste, like ash on the tongue. But it was the only thing between us and a slow, screaming death. I could already feel the burn in my skin, a prickling heat that no cloth could stop. "Stay close," Marin said, her voice muffled through the filter. "Watch your footing. If one of us goes down there alone, we're dead." We began the descent. The air thickened with each step, heavy and oppressive, pressing against my chest like a hand. The counters shrieked steadily, their static rising and falling as though mocking our every move. The brothers joked no more. Their eyes darted constantly to the shadows, to the melted shapes of rock and steel that seemed to shift when we weren't looking. Jed led the way, his massive frame steady even as the slope crumbled beneath his boots. He carried no map, no compass, only the kind of grim determination that doesn't need direction. He had walked through death before. I could see it in the way his shoulders hunched, in the way he never once looked back. The first bones appeared within minutes. They lay half buried in the slag, bleached white, some fused into the rock itself. Skulls with mouths open wide, ribs warped into spirals, hands outstretched as if still clawing at the air. Not raiders, not scavvers. These were the ones who had been here when the fire first fell. Their shadows were still etched into the stone. Black silhouettes burned into the walls, frozen in their final moments. We passed them in silence. Even Caleb, whose tongue never seemed to stop wagging, kept his head down. It felt wrong to speak here, as though words might stir the ghosts. Further down, the ruins grew stranger. Steel beams twisted into knots. Vehicles melted into the earth, their frames warped into shapes no craftsman's hand could ever replicate. One half-sunken APC lay on its side, its treads fused to the glassy slope. Through the shattered viewport, I could see the driver's skeleton, helmet still fused to the skull. Jonas gagged into his mask. "This place isn't natural." "No," I said softly. "It's worse." The glow wasn't alive. It didn't need to be. Death itself was enough. By midday, we reached the halfway point. The ruins of West Tek loomed closer, its jagged silhouette rising from the heart of the crater. The facility looked less like a building and more like a corpse, gutted, collapsed, its bones jutting through the ash. Towers bent at impossible angles. Walls slumped inward, cracked open to reveal the hollow guts of laboratories and offices long abandoned. Marin's eyes lit with feverish hunger. "It's there," she whispered. "Power cells, prototypes, maybe even the blueprints themselves." Jed grunted. "Or death." She didn't answer. The air was unbearable now. My chest ached, my throat burned, my skin itched beneath the mask. Every breath tasted of rust and ozone. Even with the meds, I could feel the sickness creeping in. Slow, steady, inevitable. The others felt it too. Sweat dripped into eyes, hands shook, steps grew unsteady. And yet, none of us turned back. Not because we were brave, because to turn back would mean admitting we had come for nothing. That the suffering already gnawing at our bodies was wasted. And no scavenger can stomach waste. As we pressed further, the ground grew treacherous. Glassy slopes gave way to jagged rubble, to pits of melted slag that hissed faintly, as though still burning after 2 centuries. In places, the ground cracked open, releasing a faint glow from deep within. I dared not look too long into those fissures. They pulsed, like veins, like the earth itself had blood that glowed green. The first collapse nearly killed us. Jed stepped onto what looked like solid ground, a slab of fused stone and steel. With a groan, it gave way beneath his weight. He dropped with it, vanishing in a cloud of dust. For a heartbeat, I thought we'd lost him. Then his voice rose, hoarse but steady. "Rope." We scrambled, tossing down a line. He climbed out, coughing, his arm bleeding where the rubble had torn through cloth. He said nothing, but his eyes burned hotter than before. The glow had already claimed a piece of him. As we neared the base, the counters wailed so loud they drowned out thought. I pressed mine against my chest to muffle it, but the static seemed to crawl inside my skull. The ground was littered with more bones here, not just those from the day of fire, but newer. Scavengers, like us. Rusted weapons at their sides, shattered helmets, packs torn open by desperate hands. Some had written words in the dust before they died. Names, prayers, warnings. Most were smeared, illegible. One remained clear. "Turn back." Jonas stared at it, his face pale beneath the mask. "We should—" "Too late," Marin snapped. "We're here." And she was right. West Tek's gates loomed before us now, blackened and melted, half sunken into slag. The massive blast doors that once sealed the facility hung twisted, torn open by the fury of the bomb. Through the gap, I could see darkness, a vast, yawning maw, breathing its poison into the air. The glow had led us here, and now it waited. For a long while, we stood in silence at the threshold. My body screamed to turn back, every instinct begging me to climb out, to run until the crater was nothing but a shimmer on the horizon. But my hands clenched tighter around my pack straps. Hunger drowned out fear. Jed broke the silence first. Once we step inside, there's no going back. No, Marin agreed, her eyes still locked on the ruin. But there's no fortune without risk. The brothers exchanged a glance, pale and trembling. But neither spoke against her. And me? I stood there, my chest burning, my thoughts a storm. Then I stepped forward, into the crater, into the ruin, into the glow. The doorway swallowed us whole. Inside the husk of West Tek, the world changed. The air was heavier, thicker, a soup of dust and radiation that clawed at the lungs, even through our filters. Our counters shrieked without pause, needles buried against their limits. Every step deeper was a dare to the atom, a challenge to see how much it could strip from us before we broke. The corridor stretched dark, lined with walls blackened by fire and warped by heat. Where paint had once marked emergency exits and laboratories, there were only smears of ash. Fluorescent tubes dangled from the ceiling like broken ribs, their glass melted into twisted curves. Every surface glistened faintly, with a greenish sheen, as though the glow itself had seeped into the steel and claimed it. We walked slowly, lanterns raised, weapons at hand. The silence was absolute. No wind, no insects, no echoes of life. Only the crunch of our boots on debris and the static hiss of our gear. It didn't feel like entering a ruin. It felt like trespassing into a tomb. The first room we entered had once been an office. Desks warped and collapsed into heaps. Filing cabinets burst open, their contents nothing but blackened flakes that disintegrated at a touch. On one wall, a mural still clung stubbornly, its paint blistered and cracked. West Tek, building the future, one atom at a time. Marin stood before it, her lantern casting shadows across the slogan. One atom at a time, she muttered, and it ate them whole. Jed grunted, eyes on the rubble. Future's bones looked the same as the past. We pressed on. The further we went, the more ghosts we found, skeletons slumped in corners, some still in lab coats charred black, others in the armor of security guards, their weapons rusted at their sides. One had died curled around a clipboard, the metal fused to its ribs. Another sat against a wall, helmet melted to its skull, a pistol still clutched in its bony grip. Caleb gagged. They didn't even have a chance. No one ever does, Jed said flatly. Jonas bent to pry the pistol from the corpse's hand. Marin snapped at him, her voice sharp through the mask. Leave it. We came for tech, not toys. He hesitated, then dropped it, his hands trembling. We passed through laboratories next. What had once been sterile halls of science were now twisted charnel houses. Machines slumped into puddles of slag, glass vats shattered into glittering shards. Terminals sat black and silent, their screens warped beyond recognition. Yet here and there, fragments remained. A robotic arm fused into the wall, its joints still intact. A power cell locked in a casing of melted steel, faintly humming even after 2 centuries. Marin's eyes lit as she cataloged each find, muttering to herself, already planning how to cut, pry, salvage. To her, the glow was not death. It was opportunity. To me, every object felt cursed. We reached a chamber deeper within, its doors twisted but still standing. With effort, Jed forced them open, the screech echoing like a scream through the ruins. Inside lay a meeting room, its long table half collapsed, chairs melted into the floor. On the wall hung a projection screen, blistered but still legible in places. Across it, in faded letters, I could just make out, "Forced evolutionary virus, progress report." The words sank into me like ice. I had heard whispers of it. Experiments meant to reshape men, to build soldiers who could outlast famine, fire, and radiation. Most said the super mutants were born from such work. To see the words here, in the heart of West Tek, made it real. "This is it," Marin breathed, touching the screen with reverent fingers. "Proof. Tech beyond anything the Wastes has seen." Jed's voice was low. "Monsters." She spun on him. "Weapons." The brothers exchanged a glance, unease plain in their eyes. Caleb whispered, "If they made super mutants here, then maybe we'll find what's left of them," Jonas finished. His attempt at humor fell flat. We pressed deeper. The air grew thicker, heavier. My vision swam and sweat poured beneath the mask. Even with Rad X, I felt the sickness clawing inside me, a nausea that never eased, a burning in my throat, a pounding in my skull. Jonas stumbled once, retching into his mask. Caleb caught him, dragging him upright, both brothers pale and trembling. And still, we pushed on. Because the glow tempts even as it kills. Every step deeper brought more glimpses of treasure. Half-intact terminals, sealed crates fused shut, schematics scorched but still legible in parts. Each scrap felt like a promise, a whisper. "Take me. Claim me. Make the pain worth it." We found another room, this one filled with shattered pods, cylindrical chambers, their glass long since blown out, their frames warped. Some still held remnants of flesh, dried into black husks, bones twisted into shapes no human should bear. Jonas recoiled, gagging again. "Gods, what did they do here?" Marin's eyes gleamed. "They changed the world?" "No," Jed said, voice colder than before. "They broke it." I said nothing. My stomach turned, but not just from the radiation. There was something wrong here, deeper than sickness. A weight pressing not only on flesh, but on thought, on spirit. The glow didn't just eat the body, it gnawed at the mind. We lingered too long in that room. The air shimmered faintly, a green haze curling like smoke, though no fire burned. I swore I heard voices, faint, distant, like whispers echoing through the vents. I froze, straining to listen. For a moment, I almost made out words. Then Marin's hand was on my shoulder, shaking me. "Move." I blinked, realizing the others were already in the hall, staring back at me. Their eyes were wide, uneasy. Jonas muttered. He was just standing there, staring. I heard... I stopped. The words died in my throat. Because in the glow, truth and madness sound the same. We moved on. But I carried those whispers with me. Every ruin has ghosts. But in West Tek, the ghosts don't just linger. They call to you. And some part of me feared that if I listened too closely, I might answer. The glow does not kill you all at once. It is patient. It peels you apart layer by layer, stripping body and spirit with every breath you take. By the time we reached the second level of West Tek, the sickness had its claws deep in us. It began with the small things. A heaviness in the limbs, a burning in the throat. Then the headaches came, pounding behind the eyes like a hammer against the skull. Our steps grew sluggish. Our words slurred. Even simple tasks, checking counters, loading rifles, took longer, fingers trembling too much to obey. Jonas was the first to stumble. He fell against the wall, coughing wetly into his mask. When he pulled it away, The cloth was stained with red. Caleb rushed to his side, panic twisting his features. "We need to stop," Caleb said. His voice was sharp, desperate. He won't make it if we keep pushing." Marin shook her head. "We're too close. If we turn back now, we die for nothing." Jed stood silent, but his eyes lingered on Jonas, hard and unyielding. At last he said, "Leave him." The words cut colder than the air. Caleb's face went white. "Leave him? He's my brother." "He's already dead," Jed said flatly. "You just don't see it yet." The two men locked eyes, fury simmering between them. For a moment, I thought Caleb would draw his knife. Instead, he pulled Jonas to his feet, slinging an arm over his shoulder. "He's not dead until I bury him. And I'll bury him outside this hellhole." Marin muttered under her breath, but said no more. We moved on. The glow made everything worse. Every step deeper, the counters wailed louder. The air grew thicker, heavier, as though it carried weight beyond breath. My stomach twisted. My skin itched with a fire that came from within. I swallowed Radaway, the bitter liquid burning my throat. But relief never lasted. The sickness always returned, stronger each time. And it was not just the body. The glow worked on the mind. Whispers grew louder, no longer faint but constant, curling at the edges of thought. I would glance down a corridor and see movement. Shadows shifting, faces flickering in the green haze. When I blinked, they were gone. Once I swore I saw my mother's face reflected in a shattered terminal, her lips moving as though speaking my name. I shut my eyes tight and kept walking, but I could not shut my ears. Marin muttered constantly now, words spilling too fast to catch. Schematics, equations, fragments of phrases about power cells and circuits. Her lantern shook in her hand, but her eyes burned with feverish light. She was no longer walking through a ruin. She was walking through a dream, one only she could see. Jed grew harsher. His silence turned sharp, his few words edged like knives. He snapped at us to keep pace, to stay alert, though his own steps dragged. His cough grew worse, but he would not admit weakness. And Caleb grew brittle. Every word carried tension, every glance lingered too long on his brother. Jonas leaned heavier on him with each step, his face pale, his eyes hollow, his breaths rattled, his coughs wet and deep. Each one felt like a countdown, ticking away what little time he had left. I tried to hold steady, to keep my mind fixed on the path, on survival, but the glow gnawed at me too. My chest ached, my vision swam, and the whispers pressed harder, calling from vents, from walls, from the bones scattered at our feet. We passed more skeletons here. These were not the ones caught in the first blast. These were scavers, like us. Some curled in corners, their packs still strapped to their backs. Others sprawled in doorways, weapons rusted at their sides. A few had written with their last strength, messages scrawled in dust, in blood. Don't drink the water. They're still here. The glow is inside. I did not ask what those words meant. I was too afraid of the answers. The deeper we went, the more the facility fought us. Corridors collapsed without warning, rubble blocking paths and forcing us into detours through labs warped beyond recognition. Pools of glowing water shimmered in corners, their surfaces bubbling faintly, the counters screaming when we neared. We crossed one by stepping along a narrow pipe, the liquid hissing below us. Caleb nearly slipped with Jonas on his back, but Jed caught them both with a hand like iron. The reprieve did not last. By the time we reached another stairwell, Jonas collapsed entirely. His mask slipped as he fell, and he lay gasping, his breath ragged, blood trickling from his nose. Caleb dropped to his knees beside him, frantic. "We can't keep going." Caleb's voice cracked, desperation raw in his throat. "He'll die! He is dying!" Marin's eyes burned with fury. "We're almost there. If we turn back now, we lose everything." "Everything?" Caleb snapped, tears streaking his dirt-stained face. "This is everything. He's my brother." The argument echoed in the stairwell, their voices clashing like blades. Jonas coughed weakly, his hand trembling as it reached for Caleb's. His lips moved, but no sound came. Jed stood silent for a long time, then muttered, "He's right. He won't make it." I looked at Jonas, at the hollow eyes, the rattling chest. I wanted to argue, to say something, anything. But the words died. Because Jed was right. The glow had already claimed him. Caleb refused to hear it. He lifted Jonas onto his back, his legs shaking under the weight. "Then I'll carry him. I'll carry him until the end." Marin spat in frustration, but didn't stop him. None of us could. We pressed on, but every step grew heavier. My thoughts swam, my body staggered. The whispers in my skull grew louder, clearer, voices I almost recognized. Some called my name, others laughed. One whispered, soft and cold, "You belong here." I clenched my teeth until they ached, forcing myself forward. But inside, I knew the truth. The glow was inside us now. Not just in our blood, not just in our bones. It had seeped into our thoughts, into our very will. And it would not let go. For all the silence of the glow, it was not empty. West Tek still had guardians, though the men who built them had turned to dust centuries ago. We found the first as we pressed deeper into the facility's bowels, past collapsed corridors and into chambers where the air felt thicker than water. The stairwell opened into a long hall, lined with shattered terminals and half-melted crates. At its far end, a pair of doors hung twisted, one fused to the frame, the other sagging from broken hinges. Beyond lay darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the lantern light. Marin moved first, her steps quick, eager. "This will be it," she whispered. "The heart of it. The labs." Her words had barely faded when the sound came. A whirring, faint at first, then louder. The grind of gears, the crackle of static. Red eyes flickered in the dark. 2, then 4, then more. Shapes moved within the shadow, heavy and deliberate. Protectrons. Their frames were warped, their armor blackened by centuries of heat. But their voices still croaked through speakers clogged with static. Security, breach. One raised an arm, sparking faintly, and the corridor lit with the glow of a weak but still lethal laser. "Down!" Jed barked. The beams sizzled past, scorching the wall where Marin had been a heartbeat earlier. She hit the floor, rolling behind a half-melted crate. Caleb dragged Jonas with him, the sick man groaning weakly as they collapsed into cover. I dove behind a slab of concrete, my counter screeching in my ear as sparks rained. Jed stood his ground, rifle braced, teeth bared. He fired again and again. Bullets sparked against metal hides, but one struck true, cracking a sensor. The Protectron staggered, voice garbling, before collapsing in a heap of smoldering wires. Another advanced, its steps heavy, its voice a hiss. Deadly. Force. Authorized. Marin rose from cover, leveling her pistol. The shot cracked, shattering a joint. Sparks flew as the robot lurched, collapsing into the rubble. Move! Jed roared. We surged forward, weapons raised, the air thick with smoke and static. The Protectrons fell one by one, but not without cost. Caleb took a glancing beam across the shoulder, the cloth and flesh beneath scorched. He screamed, dropping Jonas for a heartbeat before scrambling to drag him again. When the last robot fell, silence returned, broken only by our ragged breaths and the hiss of damaged circuits. The glow of their dying eyes faded, leaving only the green shimmer of radiation. Even here, Jonas whispered weakly, blood flecking his lips. They guard their graves. Marin crouched over one of the ruined machines, prying at its innards with trembling hands. Circuits intact, she muttered feverishly. Energy cells. These are worth a fortune. Jed ripped her hand away, his voice a growl. They almost killed us. She spat back, eyes wild. That's because they're valuable. Nothing worth having is ever undefended. I turned from their argument, scanning the hall. The sight of the dead Protectrons chilled me more than their weapons had. Not because of the fight, but because after 2 centuries, they still functioned. Still obeyed. Still killed for masters long dead. What did that say of the place we had entered? That it wasn't just a ruin. It was a machine. A machine still running, still waiting, still working as though the bombs had never fallen. The glow was not dead. We pressed on. Deeper within, the corridors changed. No longer melted chaos, but intact sections where the blast had not reached. Walls still gleamed faintly with faded paint. Warning signs clung stubbornly to doors. Authorized personnel only. Biohazard. Do not enter. We did. The next chamber was vast, lined with cylindrical pods that stretched from floor to ceiling. Most were shattered, their glass blackened, their contents long since rotted. But a few still glowed faintly, light flickering within like dying stars. Shapes floated inside, twisted, swollen, inhuman. Jonas groaned at the sight, his head lolling against Caleb's shoulder. They're still here, Caleb gagged. Gods, what did they do? Marin's eyes gleamed. Experiments. The FEV. This is history. History, Jed spat, should stay buried. We skirted the pods, the counters shrieking louder than ever. My skin crawled, my throat burned. Whispers filled my ears again, louder now, more insistent. I swore I heard screams woven into them, echoes of voices begging, pleading, roaring in fury. And then one of the pods hissed. We froze as vapor spilled from its cracks, rolling across the floor. A shape shifted within, slamming against the glass with a muffled thud. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. Move! Jed bellowed. We ran. Behind us, the pod burst. A sound rose, a screech, guttural and wet, not human, not machine. I did not turn to see what clawed free. I only heard its steps, heavy and furious, as it thrashed against the chamber. We slammed through another door, dragging rubble to bar it. On the other side, the sound pounded once, twice, then faded into silence. No one spoke for a long time. Our breath rasped in masks, our counters shrieked, our hearts pounded like drums. At last, Marin whispered, "Do you know what that was? Do you understand what it means?" Jed cut her off with a glare that could have cracked stone. But in my heart, I knew. We all did. The FEV, the experiments, the monsters the old world had birthed in this place. Some had died with the fire. Others had waited, sealed in glass, dreaming in poison, until fools like us came to wake them. West Tek had guardians. Not just machines, not just radiation, but things that should never have been. We were not explorers, not scavengers, not even trespassers. We were prey, wandering through the den of predators who never truly died. No one spoke after the pod burst. We staggered deeper into West Tek in silence, each of us nursing our own terror. Jonas wheezed with every step, his skin pale as ash, eyes half closed. Caleb bore his weight without complaint, though his arms trembled, his face slick with sweat. Jed walked ahead, rifle raised, eyes sharp despite the blood that leaked from his coughing fits. Marin trailed at his heels, muttering like a woman half mad, her words a mixture of numbers, schematics, and prayers to no God I recognized. And me? I walked with lead in my chest, both from the sickness clawing at my lungs and the knowledge settling like stone in my gut. We were not getting out. Not all of us. Maybe not any of us. The facility shifted again as we descended. Corridors gave way to reinforced chambers, their walls still solid, their doors sealed with locks meant to withstand war. Strangely, some still worked. Jed wrenched one open after Marin bypassed its panel with shaking hands, and what lay beyond froze us all in place. Rows upon rows of crates. Not the shattered, rusted husks we'd passed before, but intact containers stamped with the West Tek insignia. Some bore markings I recognized. Energy weapons prototype, fusion core storage, military circuitry. Others were cryptic. Project Omega, subject records, restricted access. The room hummed faintly with power, as though the machines within still remembered their purpose. A terminal flickered weakly on the far wall, its green glow cutting through the dust like a beacon. Marin gasped, falling to her knees before the nearest crate. Do you see? Do you see what this is? Her hands shook as she brushed dirt from the markings. It's real. The stories, the fortune, it's all here. Jed said nothing. His jaw was set, his eyes cold. But I saw his hands tremble on his rifle. Caleb lowered Jonas gently against a crate, panic and desperation mingling in his eyes. If we can carry this out. If we can. He broke off, glancing at his brother. Jonas's chest barely rose and fell, his breath a faint rattle. We're not carrying anything, Jed growled. We're barely carrying ourselves. Marin ignored him. She was already prying at the crate's seals with a knife, her movements frantic. The latch broke with a snap, and she wrenched the lid open. Inside lay weapons. Sleek rifles, unlike anything I'd seen in the wastes. Their metal gleamed faintly, untouched by rust, their power cells glowing a soft blue. Energy weapons, the kind caravans would kill for, the kind warlords would trade whole settlements to own. Marin's laugh rang sharp and wild. Do you understand? This is enough to buy an empire. She reached for one, her fingers trembling. Jed's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Touch it, and you're dead, he said, his voice low. Her eyes flared. You'd kill me for this? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Caleb's voice cracked, desperate. We can't just leave it. If we can get even one out. Look at us, Jed barked. His voice echoed in the chamber, hard and final. We're bleeding. Dying. The glow's already inside us. You think you'll make it out with a crate on your back? You won't make it 10 steps. The silence after his words was suffocating. And yet I felt it too. The pull. The promise. The crates glimmered in the dim light, every line of script, every glowing cell whispering of fortune. I thought of food, clean water, shelter, of safety bought with the treasures of this place. I thought of never scavenging another rusted toaster just to scrape by. But Jed was right. The glow does not give without taking. And it had already taken too much. Marin broke the silence. Her voice was calm now, too calm. Her eyes glazed like glass. Then we leave it? After everything? After coming this far? No fortune's worth dying for, Jed said. Her laugh was bitter, hollow. Then what's worth living for? The question hung in the air like a blade. Jonas stirred weakly, his voice a rasp. Nothing. In here. His words struck deeper than any weapon. For the first time, Marin faltered. Her hands fell from the crate, trembling. She looked at Jonas, at his pale face, his dying breath, and for a moment, her fever broke. But only for a moment. The glow has a way of worming into the soul, of planting hunger that cannot be quenched. Even as we argued, even as we staggered beneath its weight, the treasure lay before us, gleaming, promising. We opened more crates. Fusion cores stacked neatly in padded cases. Circuit boards pristine as the day they were made. Power armor frames, their plating warped, but their cores intact. Enough tech to rebuild an army, to reshape the wasteland, and all of it out of reach. Because even if we could carry it, even if we filled our packs and staggered back to the surface, who would make it to the ridge alive? Jonas was already dying. Caleb could barely stand beneath his weight. Marin was half mad. Jed bled with every cough. And me? I felt the glow burning in my bones, hollowing me out with every step. The cruelest truth of the glow is not that it kills you. It's that it shows you everything you ever wanted, lays it at your feet, then laughs as you realize you'll never hold it. We lingered too long. Marin crouched by the terminal, her fingers flying over keys, her voice a whisper of numbers and codes. Caleb paced, torn between guarding his brother and staring at the crates. Jed leaned against the wall, his breath ragged, eyes fixed on the exit as though daring the darkness to move. I sat beside Jonas. His hand was cold in mine, his eyes half closed. He looked at me then, and in a voice barely audible, he whispered, "Don't let her take it." I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. The glow had already won. It didn't matter if we carried nothing out. It didn't matter if we carried everything. The price was the same. And yet, we stayed. Because once you've seen the treasure of the glow, once you've touched it, you cannot walk away. Not truly. Even if your body leaves, part of you stays behind. Part of me is still there now. The glow does not like thieves. It lets you look, lets you touch, lets you dream of what could be. And then, when your hunger has sharpened to a blade, it bares its teeth. We lingered too long in that vault of treasures, too long among the crates and the promises of power. Marin tapped feverishly at the terminal, trying to pry secrets from its flickering green light. Caleb knelt by Jonas, muttering prayers under his breath, as though words could hold his brother to life. Jed prowled the edges of the chamber, restless, his eyes darting to every shadow. And then the alarms woke. They began as faint beeps, muffled beneath layers of static. Then came the klaxons, shrill and broken, howling through the ruin like the cries of a dying animal. Red lights flickered overhead, casting the chamber in blood. "Security! Breach!" croaked a voice from some half-functioning speaker, warped and guttural. "Containment. Protocol. Active." Marin gasped, eyes wide with awe instead of fear. "It still works," she whispered. 200 years. And it still... Her words were drowned out by the sound of grinding metal. Doors slammed shut across the chamber, massive slabs of steel groaning as they sealed. Dust rained from the ceiling. From the far wall, panels hissed open. And the Guardians stepped free, not Protectrons this time. Sentry bots. Their hulking frames glowed faintly, eyes burning like coals. Rust had scarred their armor, and one dragged a crippled leg, but their weapons still hummed with lethal power. Gatling lasers whirred to life, and the chamber filled with a scream of charging capacitors. "Down!" Jed roared. The first beam lanced across the room, vaporizing the crate beside Marin in a burst of light and fire. She screamed, diving behind cover. Caleb threw himself over Jonas, shielding his brother with his own body. I hit the ground, the air searing as the shot passed overhead. Jed stood his ground, firing back with grim precision. Bullets sparked against steel, but the machines barely flinched. They advanced, heavy steps shaking the floor, their weapons shrieking with power. "Move!" Jed shouted. "We can't fight them here." We scrambled. Caleb half-dragged, half-carried Jonas, his face twisted with desperation. Marin abandoned the crates, her eyes darting between the treasure and the door. At last, she chose survival, sprinting after Jed as he forced open a side passage. I followed, lungs burning, counters screaming in my ears. Behind us, the chamber erupted in fire as sentry bots unleashed their fury on the treasures of the old world. Crates burst, fusion cells exploded, the air filling with smoke and light. The ruin itself seemed to convulse. Walls groaned, ceilings cracked, rubble rained down. The glow was collapsing, trying to bury us with the ghosts we had disturbed. We stumbled through corridor after corridor, the path shifting as debris sealed off old routes. Alarms howled, lights flickered, and every turn felt like a trap. At one junction, a Protectron lurched from the shadows, sparks trailing from its broken limbs. Jed smashed it aside with the butt of his rifle, never slowing. Jonas coughed blood, his breaths shallow and wet. Caleb dragged him onward, tears streaking his dust-caked face. "Just a little further," he whispered, though none of us believed it. Marin lagged behind, muttering feverishly. "We can't leave it all. We can't... There must be something." Her hands pawed at rubble, at shattered crates, searching for scraps even as the ruin fell around us. Jed grabbed her arm, dragging her forward. "Forget it. Live." She screamed in his face, her voice raw with rage. "You don't understand. This is the future. This is..." A section of ceiling collapsed behind us, silencing her words. Dust and stone filled the hall, sealing the path. We pressed on. Every step felt heavier. My vision swam, my chest burned, my legs trembled beneath me. The glow had seeped deep, hollowing me out. The whispers roared now, louder than the alarms, voices calling from every shadow. Some begged, some mocked. One voice, my own voice, whispered, "Stay. You belong here." I clenched my teeth and staggered forward. At last we reached the stairwell leading upward. The doors hung open, twisted by the blast centuries ago. Beyond lay a shaft choked with rubble, but a narrow path remained. "Go!" Jed barked. Caleb tried to lift Jonas, but the man slumped in his arms, lifeless. His eyes stared blankly, his chest still. Caleb froze, his face pale, his body trembling. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Jed seized his arm. "He's gone." Caleb clung tighter to the corpse, his voice breaking. "I won't leave him. We don't have time," Jed roared. The alarms shrieked louder. Dust rained from above. The ruin groaned as though ready to collapse. I stepped forward, my own voice shaking. "Caleb, if you stay, you'll die here too." He looked at me then, eyes hollow, face streaked with tears. Slowly, his grip loosened. He laid Jonas down on the rubble, pressing his forehead to his brother's for a heartbeat. Then he rose, stumbling after us, his sobs muffled by the mask. We climbed. Every step was agony. The air grew thicker, hotter, as though the ruin itself burned around us. My vision blurred, my limbs faltered, but Jed pulled us onward, his strength the only thing keeping us from collapse. Maren stumbled behind, her muttering reduced to broken sobs. At last, we reached the surface. The night sky stretched above, stars faint behind the haze of radiation. The crater glowed faintly, veins of green light pulsing through the earth. Behind us, the ruin groaned, then shuddered with a thunderous roar. Dust and fire belched from its shattered doors, the sound echoing across the wasteland. West Tek was burying its secrets again. We collapsed at the crater's edge, gasping, coughing, our bodies trembling with exhaustion. Caleb lay flat on the ground, his face buried in his hands. Maren rocked back and forth, whispering broken words. Jed sat silent, his rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the horizon. And me? I lay on my back, staring at the sky, the whispers still echoing in my skull. We had escaped. But the glow was not done with us. Because you do not leave the glow, not truly. It leaves its mark on you, etched into blood and bone, burned into thought. It follows you into the light, into your dreams, into the silence between breaths, and it never lets go. We made it out. That should have been victory enough. But the glow does not measure victory in the same way we do. It is not about reaching daylight, or standing at the crater's edge, or breathing air untainted by the ruin's stench. Survival is not enough. Because when you walk into the glow, you do not leave the same. We left Jonas in the belly of West Tek. His bones will rest there, mingled with the hundreds who came before, buried beneath rubble and fire. Caleb has not spoken since. His eyes are hollow, his voice gone. He walks like a shadow now, his hands trembling as though still clutching his brother. Maren's fever never broke. Even as we staggered north, away from the crater, her mind remained trapped inside it. She muttered about schematics, about weapons, about fortunes waiting for us to return. At night, she would wake screaming, clawing at her pack, insisting the treasure was still inside, that we had carried it with us. Jed threatened to leave her more than once. I think, in truth, she never left the glow at all. Jed himself. He grew quiet. Too quiet. He coughed blood each night, wiping it away with hands that shook more than he wanted us to see. But he never complained, never faltered. He bore the sickness like a badge, as though enduring it proved his strength. Yet his eyes betrayed him. He stared at the horizon with the gaze of a man who knows his road is short. And me? I carry it still, The burn in my bones, the whispers in my head, the memories etched like scars on my soul. Sometimes, when the night is quiet, I hear the hum of the glow again. The counters scream in my dreams, needles buried against their limits. I see the light bleeding through fissures in the earth, pulsing like veins. I hear voices calling my name. And worse, sometimes I answer. We came seeking fortune, tech enough to buy safety, comfort, maybe even power. And in a way, we found it. The crates were real. The weapons gleamed as if forged yesterday. The secrets of the old world lay at our feet, waiting for hands bold enough to take them. But the glow has rules. It gives, but it always takes more than it gives back. It took Jonas first. His body, his breath, his last words. It took Caleb's spirit, leaving him a shell of grief. It took Marin's mind, devoured by hunger that will never be satisfied. It took Jed's strength, bleeding him from the inside with every cough. And me. It took pieces I cannot name. Hope, perhaps. Trust. The illusion that the past can never be reclaimed. The glow is not a ruin. It is a hunger. A trap set by the old world, baited with treasures meant to tempt fools like us. And once you see it, once you breathe it, once you let it inside you, it never lets go. That is the price of the glow. Do not mistake me. It is not merely radiation. It is not merely machines or monsters left to guard the bones of West Tek. The glow is deeper. It is the weight of every secret buried in that place, every atrocity wrapped in the language of progress, every experiment etched into the walls. It is the guilt of the old world, still alive, still waiting, still punishing those who come too close. It is not a place. It is a curse. I tell you this not as a warning to stay away, though you should. I tell you this because even if you heed my words, part of you will not. Part of you will wonder, as I once did, what if? What if I could take one crate, one weapon, one piece of history? What if I could succeed where others failed? That thought will whisper to you. And if you listen too long, you will find your feet turning south, toward the crater, toward the wound that still bleeds green into the night. And when you reach its edge, when you see the glow with your own eyes, you will understand what I mean. It is beautiful. Horrible, yes. Deadly, yes. But beautiful. The way a fire is beautiful as it devours a home. The way a storm is beautiful as it tears a town apart. The way a corpse can be beautiful when lit by the last rays of the setting sun. That beauty will hold you. And once it holds you, it will never let you go. So remember this. If you remember nothing else, the glow is not yours to claim. It does not belong to you. It does not belong to me. It belongs to itself, to the fire that made it, to the ghosts that linger within it. You can walk into it, yes. You can touch its treasures, breathe its poison, hear its whispers. But you cannot conquer it. You cannot steal from it. You cannot win. The glow always wins. We left West Tek behind. We walked north, coughing, bleeding, hollow. One by one, the others will fall. Jed sooner than later, his body too proud to admit its weakness. Marin when her madness leads her back to the crater's edge. Caleb when grief swallows what little of him remains. And me? I will write these words. I will leave them where others might find them. I will hope, though hope feels like a fool's game, that someone will read them and turn away. But I know the truth. The glow calls to all of us. And one day, someone else will follow its voice into the crater. They will see its treasures. They will hear its whispers. And they will pay its price. Because no one leaves the glow. Not really.